All right, so Ethel Kennedy. Talk about a woman who understood the spotlight. I mean, 11 kids, a whole life dedicated to social justice. And, oh yeah, that last name. She was practically American royalty.
Absolutely. And, her passing at 96 has brought a wave of tributes, which is to be expected. But it's also kind of, well, brought some family drama back into the spotlight, especially with her son, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, and the thing that everyone seems to be talking about is Cheryl Hines, from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
She's married to RFK Jr., and they've been pretty quiet with all this stuff about his alleged affair.
They have been pretty quiet, yeah, but not completely. Hines posted on Instagram about Ethel, and at first glance it seems very heartfelt, talking about laughter and Ethel's strength. But it's interesting because this is the first time she said anything publicly about her husband since the news of the scandal broke.
It's like, is this real grief or a carefully calculated move in the Kennedy family chess game of public image? Because they always have it all together when it comes to that.
Oh, absolutely. You remember how they were during Chappaquiddick? Or how JFK's rumored affairs were an open secret the press wouldn't touch? This is a family that understands how things look, maybe more than any other family in American history.
Yeah, they've had a lot of practice. So for anyone who hasn't been following every detail of this, RFK Jr. was accused of having an affair with Olivia Newsy, who's a political reporter. Now he's denying it all, says they met one time, nothing to see here.
Except that Newsy actually confirmed that the affair happened to her employer and was then put on leave because of it. And on top of that, there are sources saying they were having intimate video calls, even saying I love you to each other. Doesn't sound like a one-time coffee date to me.
Definitely not. This is giving very much, he doth protest too much, methinks.
Exactly. And this is where that whole Kennedy mystique comes into play. Would any of this even be a thing if his name was John Smith? Probably not. But being a Kennedy with that whole legacy, there's a different set of rules.
Totally. Their lives are like a Shakespeare play. There's always something happening. So Hines finds out about this, and understandably, she's not happy. People are saying she's mortified, considering divorce, and she's even been seen without her wedding ring.
Which is a big deal. Body language doesn't lie. But then it gets even more interesting because now sources are saying RFK Jr. is pulling out all the stops to save the marriage, trying to win her back.
It's a real-life soap opera with real political consequences. This has to have messed with RFK Jr.'s presidential ambitions.
100%. This whole thing goes against the image he's carefully built for himself, running on being truthful and transparent. The Kennedy, who cares? Hard to do that when you're allegedly sexting someone else.
Hard sell, even with that last name. And that's what makes what Cheryl Hines does next so interesting.
She goes totally silent on social media, at least about her husband. No comments about anything, no pictures together, just that one post about Ethel. It's kind of brilliant when you think about it.
It is, because it's not like she's saying nothing, right? She's showing respect for the family, acknowledging how important this is, without ever mentioning the big thing everyone's talking about.
Exactly. That's what they're known for, the Kennedys. Strategic silence. They know when to speak, when to stay quiet, and how to get their message across by not doing anything just as well as by making a big speech.
So RFK Jr.'s out there trying to deny things, change the subject, and she's letting everyone see her as this devoted daughter-in-law.
And it plays into that whole Kennedy story, right? Strong women sticking by their men no matter what, just like Jackie Kennedy after the assassination, remember? The strength, the grace. Cheryl Hines is tapping into that same well of public sympathy, almost.
Feels like we're watching a masterclass in PR damage control, except it's real life. What's interesting to me is how this scandal, with all the juicy details, might actually help RFK Jr. in the end.
Oh, now that is an interesting thought. Tell me more.
Well, just think about it. The Kennedys and their relationship with power, scandals, forgiveness, it's complicated. Every generation seems to go through some public trial, and then somehow they come out even stronger.
It's true. Turning bad situations into political wins, that's their thing. Look at what Teddy Kennedy did after Chappaquiddick. He could have been done, but he rebuilt everything, became a really powerful voice in the Senate.
Exactly. And it's not even just about forgiveness. It's about relating to them.
Yeah.
They're the closest thing America has to royalty, but they're also really good at reminding us that they're just human, that they make mistakes too.
And those imperfections, those times when they're vulnerable, that can make people feel more connected to them than a perfect record ever could. Makes them relatable.
Right. See, even Kennedys mess up, but they always get back up. People want to be inspired by that.
The Kennedy paradox, their weaknesses make them stronger. And Cheryl Hines, I don't know if she's doing that on purpose or not, but she's playing a big part in keeping that whole thing going.
So, some people see this scandal as the end for RFK Jr. politically, but I'm not so sure. Might be the best thing that ever happened to him.
I mean, it's too soon to know for sure, but you might be onto something. The Kennedys, they always seem to surprise people, and this whole thing might not be any different.
Totally. And we can't forget about Ethel in all of this. She was like universally loved, known for her grace, how strong she was, her passing. It reminds everyone about what the Kennedys stand for, that whole legacy of service, of being willing to sacrifice.
It reminds us about legacy, yeah. And it'll be interesting to see how Cheryl Hines decides to, handle that going forward. Will she stick with this whole silent, supportive wife thing, or will she do her own thing separate from the whole Kennedy world?
She's juggling two very different worlds, you know. There's Hollywood, where image is everything, and then there's the Kennedy world, where image is like careful.
It is. And you got to hand it to her. She's doing a pretty good job navigating it, so far at least. This whole thing is like a textbook example of how public figures, politicians especially, they use everything they can to control how they're seen.
And it reminds us that even though they're always in the news, they're real people with real emotions, making tough decisions.
Decisions that can change their own lives, yeah, but also maybe even change the world.
Exactly. It just goes to show you the personal is always political, especially for a family like the Kennedys.
So true. Well, I think we've done a pretty good deep dive into this whole thing today. What do you think?
We definitely have. We went from a simple Instagram post all the way to, like, decades of Kennedy history. Proof that the most interesting stories are often the ones that aren't being shouted from the rooftops.
Couldn't agree more.
So for everyone listening, we want to know what you think. What's Cheryl Hines' deal? Is she being strategic? Is she just trying to get through a tough time? Or is it something else entirely? Let us know on social media. We love hearing from you. And remember, there's always more to uncover, so stay curious.